In this episode...
Why did you do this?
You're asking the hard-hitting questions. At least I don't play Dungeons and Dragons. I think everybody's internal worlds are weird. That's a lovely thing. I'm Luke Miller. I have a indie tabletop role-playing game publishing company called Graycastle Press. And through Graycastle Press, I've been releasing tools for writers and for game masters that are really focused around world building. Journey has sold a few thousand copies. Journey is a game you can play through, but it is still a tool. So you roll your die, you get your result, flip to aspect tables within the book. Draw your cards. There's another little thing I added of suit modifiers, and you're going to walk away from a session with Journey with a ton of inspiration. You may not use all of it, and then it's 2 more hours and you haven't eaten lunch and you're just like, what the heck? I just love snacks. I just love all kinds of snacks. I freaking love magic and wizards.
We're like long lost twins somehow.
I'm excited about it, and I'm like word vomiting about it. You get me, we're in this. I want to talk to you for hours about this now.
If you know a writer or tabletop gamer, there's no way they're not going to love this. I can't even imagine. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Perty Nerdy Talk Show. Today I have someone on this channel that I always say it, I know, I'm very excited to talk to these people. Okay, I'm gonna cut this part out because I'm already like, I'm so excited. Maybe I'm not gonna cut this part out because it's funny to watch me just stumble. Luke Miller is a writer and a game designer and a software developer. I'm gonna ask you about that later. I came across Luke Miller on my TikTok because, as you all know, my channel is focused on world building for writers and tabletop gamers. He has this solo RPG called Journey, which I can't wait to dig into. It just seemed like the perfect fit. I also came across another video of another product he has called Tome, which again, perfect fit. So I reached out to him immediately and I said, hey, can we chat on my channel? I can't wait. First, before we dig into that, Luke, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you want people to know about you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on your show. This is super fun. I haven't gotten to do one of these in a little while, so I'm just as excited as you are. Yeah, I'm Luke Miller. I have a indie tabletop role-playing game publishing company called Graycastle Press. And through Graycastle Press, I've been releasing tools for writers and for game masters that are really focused around world building. My experience in this realm, I definitely kind of grew up as a fiction lover, a fantasy lover especially. I kind of cut my teeth on reading on the Dragonlance novels way back when by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. Very well-known series, but I even go back to them today to reread those stories. And so those really caught my attention as a kid, especially as a kid who very much had this internal world that I lived in. And I was always imagining and pretending and, just entertaining myself. I was the youngest of 3, so I tended to entertain myself a lot. And so I feel like that kind of like writing experience and getting to like create my own places to escape to was always a really big piece of my creative process. And so as we hit the pandemic and I've been trying to get into like Dungeons and Dragons and play tabletop role-playing games, finally found a group, and once we started playing, I finally realized these creative processes I've had for writing and for world building that have always been very much like my own like mental processes. I've always had a hard time kind of, how do I explain this to somebody else in a way they could use or they could interact with in a way that, is true to what I'm trying to like convey. I realized I could put these into a game. And so this is after I also discovered solo tabletop role-playing games, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about, but I created Journey back about 2 years ago, and it is very much a solo tabletop world-building game made for writers and for game masters, anybody who has a fictional world you want to learn more about. And so from there, it's just been kind of a wild ride. Journey has sold a few thousand copies, which was more than I expected, which is super great. And it's just been really fun to start seeing more and more how these solo tabletop games and these solo world building games can be used by writers and other creatives as ways to really add a lot of kick to your creative process. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, and I live here in California with my husband and my 2 corgis.
Corgis are just the cutest. They have the cutest little behind wiggle.
Oh my gosh. And these 2, their names are Luna and Sol, and they have the most attitude, I tell you. They're too smart for their own good. And oh my goodness, especially especially Luna. She thinks she's in charge. So.
That's so cute. You mentioned that Journey is helpful for creatives that, you know, are putting together their fictional world. Do you find, or have you heard any feedback from anyone that it's used primarily for fantasy, or have you heard anybody use it for sci-fi? Is it that translatable to all genres?
Originally, it was very much fantasy because that's kind of the world, the creative world I tend to live in. You know, kind of the typical medieval fantasy, magic and wizards and stuff. And so it was originally that, but the more I used it and the more I started kind of play testing it with writers, with game masters, I started to see that it didn't have to be. And so it's in its final form, it's very agnostic when it comes to genre. It can be a full universe sci-fi setting that you're traveling to different places to dig in and get some detail in. It can be a single room that you choose for your setting. So with Journey, you start by defining that setting. What does that look like? What world, you know, in the loose use of that term, am I wanting to explore? And then it puts you into the shoes of somebody within that world and walks you through the process of traveling to different waypoints within that place, whatever your setting might be, and then uses drawing cards and some other mechanics to define, what am I looking at in here? Am I looking at something that points to the history of this place, and what is that? And it zooms you into a really interesting small detail of that place. Am I meeting a person that's within this place? Who are they? What am I noticing about them? How are they acting within this space? And it helps to inform a little bit more creative detail about those places within your world. And the thing I love about these games, Journey and other solo role-playing games, is that you can use these, and it's not just the little detail that you're exploring, that you're getting information about, because oftentimes that informs the world around it. Like if I'm in this, you know, I'm in a space station in a sci-fi novel, or this world that I'm creating, a priest walks in, or a religious figure, or I find something that is pointing to ancient history of somebody on this station, that immediately builds these connections out to other areas of this world. And you may be exploring this really finite area, and it really draws more information and more inspiration for the world around it. But it definitely isn't necessarily tied to fantasy. It isn't tied to sci-fi. Really, any fictional world, even if it's a fully non-fantastic, non-science fiction modern book that's set in, you know, an Earth analog type place, or even if it's in a place that is a real world place but you're trying to get some fictional inspiration in. It can be used pretty much in anything, which is why I wanted to make it as flexible as possible.
Yes, that is great. I love that. I'm curious, have you dealt with World Anvil? Have you used World Anvil at all? Because it sounds very, to me anyway, I'm a World Anvil user, and it sounds very similar to kind of the prompts that World Anvil gives you. But I am very curious about, you mentioned there's a card aspect to it. So do cards come with the book and they're meant to be used with it, or is it like a supplemental material?
Yeah, so first, World Anvil, love. I think it's a super cool tool. I don't use it a lot in my more modern campaigns and my world building. I've been using an app called Obsidian, which is very much like a looser note-taking app. It's all like self-hosted, kind of
interesting.
a little bit clunkier than some of the other more usable tools. But World Anvil is great, and I think that is one great thing about living in the year 2023. There are so many tools and options available for people for creative things that they can use to organize all of this information, because world building there's just so much to keep in your head, and you're constantly getting new inspiration from stuff, and having a place where you can keep all that is awesome. For Journey, for cards, it actually just uses a standard poker deck. I wanted to again make it so, you know, it's tabletop adjacent, but I wanted to make sure it was using tools that everybody had on hand. It's a simple card deck, 52 card deck, jokers removed. It uses a couple D6 dice, so 6-sided dice for one part of the process. And so these are things that are really easy to get. They're not specialized tabletop dice with crazy 20-sided dice. Meanwhile, I have like 5 sets of those dice on my desk. But you know, I wanted to be something that, especially, like, I'm really wanting to get this in front of writers as a tool to use in creative writing spaces. And in order to do that, I knew that not everybody is familiar with tabletop games, solo games, and not everybody just happens to have a handful or a pouch full. Right behind me, this little thing right here is my pouch of dice, of D20s somewhere. And so I wanted to make sure it was just stuff most people had on hand or could easily get for real cheap, and it's not going to be, you know, a barrier of entry.
I'm imagining how this works, and I'm already fascinated, because with World Anvil there are prompts to at least get your mind thinking, but I'm wondering, are the dice and the cards used to kind of help with like a randomized aspect of whatever you're building, to kind of help push the creator out of their comfort zone, if you will? Is that what's the intent of the dice? Or let me rephrase the question. Can you walk us through an example of how the card and dice would be used?
Totally. So in Journey, and I'll flip open to a couple pages. I love the interior design of it, by the way. All of the artwork is these old antique etchings and engravings that I then took and turned into some pretty cool vector artwork for inside the book to give it kind of this like antique journal feel to go with the antique book exterior of the book.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love the design of the book, so I'm always talking about that. But
actually, sorry, I'm going to pause you real quick.
Yeah,
folks. Okay, I kind of, because I'm doing a little research because we're having our interview today, I went scrolling through your TikTok, and there was this really interesting TikTok, folks. He was trying to get some inspiration for a sci-fi, something like an older sci-fi feel for something you're doing. Watch that TikTok, folks. It was so fascinating because I could see and hear your process, and you were just so excited that you found this format that inspired the look and the feel of whatever project you were working on. So watch that TikTok, folks. That was really interesting.
I love that stuff. I'm always trying to share and listen, I'm not an expert. I am not like the foremost knowledge on world building and writing. I'm just another creative person who's just like your viewers, who is making cool stuff, and I'm always wanting to share the cool stuff I'm making. And those bits of the process I feel like are really valuable to share because sometimes you're like, I don't want to share it till it's done. I don't want to I don't want to like put this out there too soon when it's not ready, and then people are going to have these expectations. I'm here to tell you they won't have expectations. Share the cool stuff you're making. People will get excited about it, and then people may have other ideas. I get so much inspiration from my tabletop role-playing game players, from the people who watch my TikToks. Everybody I interact with, I get inspiration from. So I'm always a big proponent of sharing those cool little bits of your process.
That's something that I'm learning as well. I think both you and I have kind of, it's what I call the inventor, like genius type, where or innovation, where ideas just kind of come naturally, and that's what we get excited about and kind of brings us life.
Sometimes more than you want.
Right. And so because of that, I think ideas and things tend to come a little easier to us than others. And I've felt like I don't want to share those ideas because it's like, but it should be so easy, guys. Just think like this. And it's taken me many years to realize like, the ideation process doesn't necessarily come easy to everyone. So if I share the things that are easy to me, like they seem like maybe a no-brainer to me, but to someone else, it's gold, So I appreciate that. And it's just another reminder, folks, like, even if it's not in the perfect stage, if you share something, someone could completely get inspired by it. You have no idea. Sorry for that side route. No. I think this is one of those things in the creative spaces that is so important. And I always come back to this idea that we are not competitors. You may be working on a sci-fi novel about a space station with a priest on it, and I'll be working on a sci-fi novel about a space station with a priest on it. Our books and our stories and our vision is completely different. Exactly. I could put up a book. I could say, hey, I'm working on this game Journey, and it's this, and this. It's a world building game, yada, yada, yada. And you could say, wow, I have an idea for that too, and I'm going to go run down that thing. Your end result is going to be so different from mine. Like, please take this idea, do something cool with it, make more in our community for people to use and get inspired by. It's just other people working on things that are similar does not take away from my market share or whatever. Yeah. Like, I feel like there's this feeling, especially in creative spaces, of I don't want to put up my ideas because somebody will take it. Yeah. Please take it. Like, you're going to do something cool and different with it than I will ever think. And so I'm a big fan of that, of the idea that we are not competitors within these creative spaces. I would love to understand how this process of using the card and the dice works with your solo RPG.
Totally. So in Journey, like I said, you'll start by saying, okay, this is the world that I want to explore. Maybe it's my tabletop role-playing game setting that I'm going to have my players in, or a city within that world, or you're writing a fantasy or sci-fi or other type of modern fiction genre book. And there's a place in here you're like, this is cool, but I want to go explore it. And maybe it's not even for your book or your game. Like, there's been places in our tabletop game with my friends where I'm like, cool, we just breezed through this city. I want to go back and see what else is there. I want to go explore that a little bit more just because I'm curious, and maybe it'll inform something new for our game in the future, or maybe I'll just have a cool experience like dreaming it up. So within Journey, you choose that place, and then what you'll do is you go through the process of determining where in that world you're going to go, and then there's a procedure called charting a course where you'll roll a d6, a six-sided die, and it'll roll on one of 6 different types of thing you will explore. We call it a waypoint within the game. So your waypoint might be architectural. It might be an example of a building or a structure within the space. It might be natural. So it could be an animal, vegetable, mineral formation, something within those general guidelines within your space. It could be archaeological, where it points to people who used to live there but no longer do. It could be historical, about people who live there now. Social, you may be seeing a person or other place built for socializing or gatherings within your space, or it could be an individual, so it's actually a person within that space. And so you roll your die, you get your result, and then you actually will flip to these, there's a set of tables, aspect tables within the book. And so each one of these is related to a card value. And so you'll then draw your card and say, cool, I landed on archaeological and I drew a 5. And so the prompt is how the people in this setting feel about the waypoint. And so it's an exploration of, like, you know, how do people around this place regard this think of this place? You know, maybe it's a certain temple within a city and it's ostracized. People around it are like, oh, we don't appreciate that god of whatever this temple is honoring. And so that adds a little bit of context to it of like, okay, well then I can start asking, well, why? Like, why do they feel this way? What is the sentiment around that? What is the history behind that? And so it kind of puts you down a little path. And then there is when you're drawing cards, there's another little thing I added of suit modifiers. And so if your card, that 5 was, you know, a 5 of hearts, diamonds, clubs, or spades, if it's a heart, that something about that elicits a strong emotion from you. And so it adds these little modifiers on top of the way you're regarding the thing, and it makes it super flexible. So even if I draw 5 on the same table twice in a row, especially if I'm using modifiers, I can like get a completely different angle on this thing. And then once you're done kind of doing that initial exploration and you move on to a different waypoint, it actually guides you through the process of traveling through your space to go to that waypoint. What is that like? Maybe you run into some unforeseen challenges along the way that give you a little bit more look and kind of view into what this place is like. And then you'll go through and you'll actually, it's kind of like a wish you were here exercise where you take the biggest, most top of mind items of that thing you just explored and write it down on like a postcard home. And that gives you the chance to kind of like, cool, it's almost like reviewing your notes and taking notes at the end of like, what jumped out at me the most about this?
Right.
And I'm going to keep that. And at the end, you have a traveler's journal of this whole process where you've gone through and you've had these experiences, you've explored these things, and you're going to walk away from a session with Journey with a ton of inspiration. You may not use all of it, you don't have to, but at the very minimum, a cool experience of getting to walk through this place you've envisioned in your mind. And at the most, you'll come up with some really great ideas you can take back to your work, which is definitely the goal.
Oh my God, I'm so blown away. I can't wait to buy a set of this for myself, because there's a couple things I wanted to bring up. I mean, we're recording right now in the month of November. This video most likely will not be coming out in November. However, NaNoWriMo is going on right now. Have you gotten tons of feedback from folks who just use this during the month of NaNoWriMo, or do they use it as like prep before NaNoWriMo? Have you heard any of that feedback?
Yeah, I definitely have. I actually got an email a week ago from a teacher, a K through 12 teacher, who's using this in a creative writing course with some of his students, and they're ages 14 through 17. They're loving Journey, and they're participating in NaNoWriMo. And so they were using that kind of as the, let's explore this place I wanna write in, you know, as prep. But I'm also finding that people are telling me they're using it during NaNoWriMo. I actually wrote an article about this on graycastlepress.com on my blog about using solo tabletop role-playing games like Journey, but plenty of others are great for this. Please buy Journey, but there are many other amazing games that are within this realm as well. Again, we're not competition. Like, right. I'd love it if you bought my book, but I would more prefer people get that experience and that creativity out of things. And so I wrote kind of a blog article saying, here's how you might use tabletop role-playing games to get you over that slump, that mid-nano slump where you're like halfway through, you're a couple weeks in.
Right.
I've never finished NaNoWriMo. Let me start with my dirty little confession there. I don't have any published novels yet. I would love to. I have a couple in progress for 5 or 6 years, but
yeah,
which I think is a tale as old as time for a lot of people.
Right, for a lot of writers.
But to like get through that mid-nano slump where you're falling off of your habit, you're not writing every day, you're kind of losing track and sight of that creative energy that you start out the month so strong of like, I'm going to do this and I love this story and this is so great. Play a solo tabletop world building or storytelling game once or twice within the context of your setting, or use something that's totally different. There was one person who gave me the recommendation of, hey, you're reading a cutesy fantasy novel, try like a dark like Call of Cthulhu game where it's these like dark aberrations and it's a completely different like feel, but you may get some interesting inspiration from looking at something from a totally different angle. And so these solo games can be really, really great. Actually, I put out a version of Journey, it's called Journey Light in that blog article too, where it's free and it's more just dice rolling and prompts and things. If people want to kind of give it a try as like an intro to solo role-playing games. But I just think they're such a good thing for things like NaNoWriMo, where you're on the path to something, you're on this goal, and you kind of lose that creative energy partway through. There's tools out there to like stoke the fires of that creative energy a little bit more. And I think solo role-playing games are really great for that.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, I also did a video on not necessarily mid nano slump, but just how when you are in a slump, things that you can do. And I only came up with like 3 ideas. Your solo RPG, I could see how, I mean, just even more than the month of Nano. I mean, consider how many, dice rolls and prompts and how many pages are in your book. Like that's gotta be like a full year's worth of just writing every day, like inspiration at least. And
that's just world building. Like that doesn't even get into there's a game called a tool called the Mythic Game Master Engine, and what it does is it seeks to take the place of a game master, so you could play with a group or play it by yourself. You can use established games like Dungeons and Dragons and play it solo with dice rolls, and they have a tool called fate charts that are kind of help you determine the likelihood of things happening. And it is a really great way to then step into the action of your story and start asking like, what if? Like, what's going to happen next? How likely is this to happen? Where does my character go? I use Mythic for that pretty often, where I'm trying to like feel a bit of story out or feel a little bit of planning for my campaign out, and asking those what if questions. Like Journey is great for world building. There are so many games out there that are great for all these different parts of the process. So
wow. Well, here's my tip, folks, since this video will probably come out after Nano, is if you know anybody who went through Nano, maybe you get this as a gift for them, because that will help them push through and complete maybe what they're writing. I don't know. It's going to be holiday gift giving season, and I think this is, if you know a writer, there's no way they're not going to love this. I can't even imagine. We talked about Journey. Let's talk about Tome. And you have Tome for DMs and Tome for players. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, what those are?
Yeah, of course. So Tome, these are a little bit bigger, so I'm going to have to heft these up. We've got Tome for Game Masters and Tome for players. And so these books kind of take the idea of prompts and apply them to people who play like weekly games in tabletop role-playing game campaigns. For example, Tome for Game Masters, especially because we're on like world building talk, Tome for Game Masters is you get these weekly prompts where it'll ask you 4 different questions about your game, about the characters within your group, about the world that the characters are in right now, and then it asks a question about kind of your experience, what you want to get out of being a game master, and it asks a similar set of 4 questions each week for players. And then it ends with a small activity. So it may be something like designing an item for somebody within your campaign, or imagine what your main antagonist is doing right now and why are they doing that thing. It really seeks to add a little bit of that same creative thinking that I really pushed with Journey into this weekly process of campaign prep, which anybody who is a tabletop fan, I know there's a lot of talk out there about, as a game master, how can I prepare? How can I really work to prepare the best? And I think this can help, but I also think it's important for players to prep. I think you're going to go step into this place where your game master has spent a lot of time putting together this amazing thing for you, and by taking the time to think about your character and how you want to play the game, it's also super beneficial. You're going to have a better time, your party's going to have a better time, your game master's going to have a better time. These really help you take a step back before getting into the mechanical nitty-gritty of the game and really think through your character, how you want to play the game, what you're wanting to get out of the game, but also just like fun things you haven't thought of. There's one question in Tome for Players, which is, if your character walked out of a store with something in their pocket, not realizing that they had it in their pocket, like they accidentally stole something, what would they do? And so it's these situational questions combined with world building questions and meta questions about your game that kind of come together each week to make you think a little more critically and creatively about your process and your experience. And that way you're going to get so much more out of your gaming sessions. Tome Volume 1 came out last year. I meant to have another volume of it come out last year as well, but things got away from me. And so Tome Volume 2, which is over here, very similar look, very similar design, is another full 52 weeks of prompts. So every week you get 4 prompts, you get an activity. You don't have to complete them in order. You don't have to complete them within a year. You don't even have to complete them with the same campaign every time. I know some folks play in multiple, or campaigns are shorter or end.
Right.
You can just move on to the next week with your next campaign and keep bringing that creativity into the game that way.
When someone purchases Tome, do they come together as a set, or they're sold separately?
So they're actually in the process. I'm getting my final proofs of these new versions that you just saw. These actually haven't been released yet. The original version was out, and then I kind of pulled it down to do this big redesign and to refresh everything, clean up some typos and other little design issues from the first version, and release versions 1 and 2, or volumes 1 and 2 together. And so those are actually, I think I just got the notification that they're shipping to me now, which is very exciting. I'm wanting to get these out. But I'm going to have it set up so you can buy, Players Volume 1, you can buy Players Volume 1 and 2 as a bundle, you can buy Volume 1 as a bundle together, you can buy all 4 of them if you want. I want to give flexibility so that if people, maybe I'm a player and a game master and I want to have both, or if I'm just a player but I really want Volumes 1 and 2, and there's going to be some promotional pricing if you're bundling them together that way, just to make things a little bit more accessible for people.
Yeah. Now, I love the idea that you did this also for players, because my experience in a lot of like online D&D forums and stuff is there are folks that ask, how do I get better at my role playing? How do I understand my character better? Questions like that. And I have seen people post ideas about things, but I feel like this puts the person in a position to answer morally gray questions. And that's,
Absolutely.
I think that's where the meat is for a character, because it's easy to know if your character's good or bad. Like, is this thing going to be a good thing or a bad thing? But what about that in between space where there's so much to explore, the little nuances of a person's character? That is fascinating to me, that there's a whole book there that will put someone through those questions and really get them thinking. Because that's what I find a lot of people, when people are asking those questions, I think that's what they're struggling with, is they need to understand how their character feels about those things. And I don't
Absolutely.
think they know the questions to put the answers there.
Totally, and I feel like it's this, you're creating this character, which it's one of the things I love about tabletop games, is they're something that I feel embarrassed always when I admit this. When I was younger, I'm a big old nerd, I always have been, but I always had that feeling of like, well, at least I don't play Dungeons and Dragons, which is so silly. And I so wish I hadn't had that mentality. Like, obviously I shouldn't have had the mentality, because that's just like silliness, but I just feel like I wish I had gotten into this earlier, because there's so much creativity playing through these things, that you're getting to know your people you're playing with in new ways every time. You're building these friendships through these shared experiences, but it's also so creative. There's something in it for everyone. You like acting, great, do voice acting, play up your role playing. If you like writing, great, be a dungeon master, create these adventures for people. Even if you're playing as a player, write up your backstory, make it compelling. There's just so many little bits of these things that are so exciting. And like you said, it can be daunting. I feel like it's such a wide open creative space, and all of these things have different ways you can approach them. And so I was just trying to give people, here's a way you can get into that process. If you're trying to be a better role player, understanding your character and the motivations more is a great way to go about it. Where, I am not very good at voices. My players will be the first to admit that I have 3 voices, and all three of them are vaguely British for some reason. If you're not wanting to do voices, you don't have to do voices. You don't have to get caught up in these amazing actual play video shows we have nowadays that they're literally professional voice actors, and so they're great at it, and they're all great friends, and they're so good at this connection. It can be easy to try to measure yourself against that when you're trying to, like, I'm going to be a better player and I'm going to embody this character more. You can go that distance if you're really great at that, and it's fun for you. I think that's the key, is if it's fun for you, if you're getting something out of it, being able to do these creative exercises and learn more about your character, learn more about how they are relating to the people around them in their party. All these little bits and pieces of that process in Tome kind of add those building blocks of understanding of this character and how they would act and work within the world to make it a little bit easier and more fun. Like, you want to know more about this person that you're playing as every week, and who they are and why they are what they are, and it just makes it more engaging, to me at least.
Yeah, and I feel personally that if you as a player have answered those questions for your character, when situations come up in a game that maybe you haven't addressed yet, you now have a good understanding of how your character will respond, and that can only help help your gameplay, I think, because instead of sitting there and now you're kind of in like a analysis paralysis or a panic about, you know, what would my character do, and possibly, I don't want to say make a wrong decision. There's no wrong decision, but there's many times I've played a game where afterwards I go home and go, man, I should have done this differently. Yeah. And so I think having a better understanding of your character really will put you in that moment in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like a lot of the advice you get is very like, it's like drinking from a fire hose, where it's like, here's 50 million prompts about your character that you should answer now and you'll have perfect understanding. And it's like, that's too much. I don't have time for that. My brain doesn't have space for that. That's why I wanted to break it down into these like weekly little exercises where you're drinking from a cup rather than a fire hose. You're getting a little pre-serving of character building, world building, of these kind of deepening your understanding of your game and your characters. And that way you're just building a little bit at a time. You don't have to have the most perfect, fleshed out understanding of your tabletop character before you start playing. You can learn about this person as you go. And I feel like continue to enhance your embodiment of that person as you're going through the process of playing the game.
I have to just it's so fascinating to me that you have come up with this and put it together in such a way that, I mean, I haven't even seen a physical copy yet, folks. It's just disclaimer here, but I will be getting one. But it just makes sense. And I think it would make sense to someone where this doesn't come naturally. It is so good. So good. Congratulations.
Well, and I want to throw it out because, like, I always say this, I build these creative tools and I love creating these things. I think that's originally when I started Graycastle Press, I was like, I'm going to create big traditional tabletop role-playing games. I'm going to do this. And then I made Journey and I was like, no, this is, I think, what I want to do. I want to make tools for people in the form of something fun. Like, especially Journey is a game you can play through, and it's a fun thing. I did a live on my TikTok where I was just, at first I was like, oh, this is going to be weird. I don't know how this is going to work. And I had so much fun playing my game. And it is a fun resource. It is a fun thing to do, but it is still a tool and it can be used for either or. And I feel like that's where Graycastle Press is going. I've got a version of Journey that's being created just for characters. And so rather than exploring a whole setting or places in that setting, it's zooming on maybe your main character or a side character. And it's using these similar processes, but different from Journey to really zoom in and understand them and the world around them. Again, to pull those strings and connections to understand bits of the world. And I have so many ideas. Again, like you said, that idea stream is strong, and I have a very large notebook of things I will likely never get to, but hope to one day. But they're all around. I want to just make stuff that writers, creatives, screenwriters have told me that they've used Journey too. It's not just writers, it's not just tabletop players, it's creatives of all stripes who want to get these different angles on their creative process. I want to make those tools. I want to make stuff that helps people both. I want to put their creative work out into the world. I want people to have that road paved and made a little bit easier through some creative tools so we can just get more people's cool stuff. Yeah. People have so much cool stuff to make, and I want to hear your stories. I want to read your book.
Right. I think that's the major barrier there, is that there are some, I would even say a lot of creatives where they have wonderful ideas that the world will never know because they can't get past the barrier of getting it out there for others to enjoy. And
absolutely,
I love that. You're just kind of breaking down that barrier and making it that much easier.
Yeah, creativity is hard, y'all, and making something that you're then going to put in front of people, clicking publish is scary. Yeah. And so, that's maybe something I'm not the best at helping with yet, but I'm working on that one. But
I beg to differ, and we're going to get back to that in a little bit.
Well,
I've seen some of your videos.
You feel that way. I'm definitely trying. I feel like if I leave no other mark on the world other than my dogs were happy, my husband's happy, and I help one creative person release something that they had trapped inside and didn't know how to get out, and suddenly it's made easier, I will be a happy man.
That's amazing. So I felt like between you and I, our excitement, I wanted to circle back to, how did you get into writing? Bring us back to young Luke, and what was the very first thing you wrote or inspiration where you thought, I'm gonna be a writer?
It's really funny. I started, my older brother taught me how to read before kindergarten. I don't remember what the book was, but he sat me down in a chair in his bedroom. I have zero idea why he did this. I don't remember. I was obviously pretty young, but for some reason my older brother was like, I'm going to teach Luke how to read, because I always had those little golden books and other books in my room as a kid. And I would love to just look at their pictures. We had one from about Oliver and Company, which to this day I've never seen. But I just thought it was the coolest book, and I would make up my own stories. I would just like narrate what was happening in these pictures. And so it was like from a super young age, I remember like just making up stories. And it was so cool, the idea that I could look at this picture and be like, what's happening? And then tie it to what's happening in the next page. And so once I learned how to read and I started getting that, like getting the words, like understand, okay, now I can tell what the stories they're telling me are.
Yeah.
But I didn't always like that. I like wanted to go back and tell my own stories, and especially now that I had the words to do it. And I remember very specifically, I was in band class, and this was in elementary school. I played the trumpet all throughout my school career. And I remember going to my band teacher with this one of those little like legal pad spiral bound notebooks that I had filled like halfway with this story I had written that was based on, it was inspired by a game called Ultima Underworld. It was this older first person game.
Ultima, wow.
And it's very, very ominous name. But kind of like a big fantasy series at one point where you get put into this underground labyrinth and you're basically tasked with like getting to the bottom so you can escape. Very fantasy storyline. And I was like, that's really cool. I could write something like that. I could make my own story. And so I just started writing on my old pencil in this notebook, and I would carry it around with me at school and just constantly be adding to it. And I remember like vague details about the story and kind of where I was going with it. The kid had a pet canary that he was taking with him in this place for some reason because my mom had canaries. And it's just the idea that I could take these things bouncing around in my head and put them down on paper for other people to see and experience. They weren't just stuck in this little internal world that I had created for myself. To be able to communicate that felt very freeing and liberating. And I feel like since then, I fell off of it a little bit. I think there was a big chunk of my life where I didn't feel like I was, I had stories to tell. I didn't feel like people wanted to read my stories. I felt like, these things these weird, funny, like odd things that I had bouncing around in my head, like, who cares? Like, they're just weird stuff inside my head. And I feel like over the last few years, I've changed my mind on that. It's just like, who cares if nobody wants to read my story? I'm going to put it out there anyway. Somebody will appreciate something from it. And even if nobody does, I will appreciate the process of having taken this idea, and fleshed it out, putting in the hard work, because it is hard work, to get it out there and put it out. And so I've been working on a couple of my novel projects, a little bit off and on recently, with that in mind of like, okay, I'm going to pick these up and I'm going to actually execute on them. Because, it's just that experience of like writing, of creating, no matter what it is, creativity, like taking something from your brain and putting it out there in a way that somebody can see. And, it's not all about money, but man, when you made something that somebody's willing to spend a couple bucks on, like that feels really cool. Like every time I get a Journey notification, like Journey sold a copy, it's a PDF copy, like I'm just like mind blown. Like I've sold thousands of these things, and every single time it feels like, wow, somebody likes what I'm making enough to give me money for it. Like that's amazing in and of itself. But the idea that I can put it out there in a way that somebody else can pick up and go, ooh, that's interesting, like so fulfilling.
I feel like that's got to be so validating, because as a creator of anything, whether you're a writer or content creator, it is hard to kind of put that first thing out there and say, well, I made this thing, folks, what do you think? And wait for the feedback, and there could be crickets, or it could be like a slow burn where it takes a while for people to notice, or it could be an instant hit. But just to put that out there, I think that's the biggest hurdle. Again, going back to like the barriers of creating, but you have to actually put it out there for someone to enjoy. Was there any moment, because you said you didn't always feel that way, and then only recently, was there a boost of confidence, or was there something that for you signified, I'm ready to do this?
For me, it was getting into tabletop role-playing games again, where I found, at the beginning of the pandemic, I had wanted for years. At that point, I was like, I've decided I want to play D&D. I started watching some, Critical Role on YouTube and some of these other larger creators. Matt Colville talking about how to run the game, and I'm just like, I already knew I wanted to be a dungeon master. I already knew I wanted to like run this game, and it's going to be so creative and cool.
Right.
And then once I finally did it, like I found this person named Jessica was on a Discord server saying, hey, I want to run a game for new people, and I just fell into this online group. And I've heard horror stories of people playing playing with people they don't know online. This group has been so fun. 3 years later, we're still like playing together almost every week.
That's amazing.
Like some of us were able, I fortunately I wasn't able to go, but one of our members got married recently and invited people to her wedding. Like we've just come this like really close-knit creative group. And I think for me, finding people that are in that same like mindset and really like engaging with it and creating with them and having them be like, we love this thing you're making, was just like a light bulb moment where it was like, oh, okay, so this like weird internal world that I have, and I say weird very loosely, I don't think it's weird at all, I think everybody's internal worlds are weird, which is a great thing. It's not a bad thing, it's a lovely thing. You know, this weird internal world I have and all these ideas that are coming into my head, like I could do something with them, like I could actually put them out there and maybe people like them. And so it was kind of cutting my teeth on this re-entering the world of storytelling through these games. And it was a very low bar of entry where now it's like, okay, my friend is running this game, I am playing a character, all I'm responsible for is this character's story and how they interact with the world around them. And then from there, like, okay, now I'm ready to step up and make the whole world. Like, I want to be the dungeon master. I want to tell all of the NPCs in the world around them. I want to be that. And then it was like, okay, cool. Now I'm ready to start. This is great. I want to keep this going. I want to keep this energy of creativity going.
Wow. That's so great that you found a supportive group. And I'm just, for any tabletop gamers that are watching this video, then take that as some inspiration, because I too have also heard horror stories. I have yet to play online with folks that I don't know yet, so I can't add to it myself, but I have seen so many people say, oh gosh, this has happened to me and it's awful and it's horrible. So I want to let you folks know it's possible to find a very good group, supportive group. I don't know, maybe you just have to go through a few bad apples. That sounds awful, but but it's possible.
Well, no, and I would recommend there is a Discord server I like, and this is not a not paid endorsement. I just like them. I would not be a publisher at this point if not for this group. It's called RPG Talk. I think that's rpgtalk.com. But they are a Discord server. It's just tabletop role playing people. There's like publishing channels in there where you can ask questions if you're trying to like make something. There's channels for all these different types of games. It's a really supportive group, and oftentimes there's people looking to form player groups in there. And so far everybody I've interacted with has been lovely.
That's so amazing. I'm so glad you shared that too, because like I said, it's good for people to hear that there are good people and there are good groups, and you just have to find them. Find your tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. Tribe is out there. You just got to find them.
Right. So you did mention now publishing, and I want to circle back to this because your TikTok is gold. I love it, folks. Find him on TikTok. There are a few things you put out there that, I mean, not that I've been in the biz for a long time or anything, but I can see valuable advice for what it is. You had a TikTok video about putting freebies in your materials to build your email list.
I love that you brought this up. I love it because this is one of my biggest things I always tell anybody I know working on a book or a tabletop game. Something that's so useful. And there's a lot of these little things. I try to talk about like marketing and publishing tips because my background's in digital marketing, and I've done, a little bit projects here and there that I've learned a thing or two. Again, I'm no like end all be all expert, but I like to share the things I learn. It's kind of that idea of if there's something that's interesting to me and has been helpful to me, if I can hand that to one other person and they're like, yeah, that's a great tool, that was useful, fantastic. So with the idea of like putting a freebie in, it's, you say, hey, I've got a template for you, or my favorite thing to recommend to people, and I wish more fantasy novelists did this, is you have these cool maps at the front of your book, and I'm like, oh, I just wonder what's going to be here, and what's this place, and that's really cool. Give me a PDF. I will gladly give you my email address. All you have to do is create a page on your website that says, hey, you want a copy of this amazing map? Put in your email address, and I'll send it to you. And then you have that person's email to let them know about your next project, updates on your book, keeping in contact, because email lists in the modern day and age are not dead. They are very much an important marketing tool. Giving somebody something that's really valuable and getting that email back in return, I feel like it's such an easy way to gain control of your list. If you're selling through Amazon, I sell through Amazon and DriveThruRPG. They own that relationship with your customer. They own the relationship with your reader or your player. And by getting that email address, that gives you an avenue to start building that relationship yourself. So you can say, I don't recommend sell, but like keep sharing little tidbits, little valuable things. Give, if you're a novelist, send out some interesting profile or background information on the characters of this book, non-spoilers, but just interesting little pieces that somebody reading your book might find interesting. And then I am going to be bought in. I'm going to be a fan. It's going to, not everybody will become a fan fan, but I probably will because you're marketing very well. Being able to build those connections with your players or your readers through that email list, just give them something for free and put that in your book somewhere. Say, hey, here's the map, but maybe at the bottom, like, see page, want the full version, see page 113. And then 113, it says, cool, go to graycastlepress.com/journey and get more information. And it'd be able to put that in there and get that. I have that in Journey, where there's a page at the back of the book. There's an idea in Journey where you have your traveler's journal and you're recording the different phases of your experience, and it gives you something you can look at the end and have a record. Well, do you want a template for that? I got a free template, and there's versions that are blank, gridded, and lined for your convenience. And then people will come in. I've had hundreds of people download this thing, and I'm able to now talk to them and connect with them, ask them for reviews, ask them for what their thoughts are and their feedback. I love feedback. I want all of it. And you're not going to get that if you can't reach out and connect with your reader.
So smart. I saw that video, and just like now, my jaw dropped. I'm in the kitchen, I think, preparing breakfast when I saw that, and my jaw just dropped. And I was like, that is so simple and so valuable, folks. So great. You had a video about your affiliate links for drive-through. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So drive-through RPG, anytime I link to anything I'm selling, if there's an affiliate program, I'm going to use it because it's a couple extra bucks, maybe even just a couple extra cents. With drive-through RPG, you can have an affiliate link to the title you are selling. So I'm the publisher, I'm linking to it, but I can put my affiliate code on that link, and I will get the affiliate kind of income from that. It's no extra cost to the customer or the reader. Amazon has similar things with their own affiliate programs. I think they have some more restrictions on if you are the publisher. I'm not sure if you can get the affiliate sales, but it's one of those little things of learning what tools are tied to your publishing system and your platform to where you can take advantage of those things. It's not something your customer ever has to worry about. It's not something they're going to see, but I've made, another $100 over the course of the year. That was just free money.
It's just there. Why leave it on the table, right?
Yeah, like drive-through RPG is just going to keep that money anyway. I'd like to have it, please, to put into my next book. And so it's important to understand the systems you have and the systems you're using, past just knowing how to use them effectively, but know how you can operate within those to your biggest benefit as a business owner or creative business owner, to be able to make sure that you're getting what you need out of it.
Right. So it's interesting that you mentioned, I guess you said you had a marketing background, or I don't know if this is like, do you have a day job where marketing is your day job, or?
Well, I used to be, I had my own web design company. I've done digital marketing for agencies and for organizations. I worked with a few nonprofits here in my area of Sacramento, and so my background in my schooling was digital marketing and business. I am now a software developer. I've transitioned into the world of building software as my day job. But I, spend a lot of time interested in online business, digital marketing, and I never stopped. Even after leaving my marketing job, I have, I want to build an online business. I want to be a creator that puts things in place that are really valuable to people and that can help me shift and change the way that I interact with my life. And I'm a big proponent on doing what you can online to bring down your dependence on needing that, the day job money. If you can become fully independent one day, amazing. That's the goal. I haven't made it there yet, but I'd love to. But to be able to do these things and really, if you're going to put stuff out, make it as impactful as possible. Get everything you can out of it, both from learnings and from financial contribution to your life. If you're going to be publishing a book, don't you want to get the most you can from it? You want to let the most people know about it in non-slimy ways. Very big number one. Very good marketing, not bad marketing.
Right.
But I feel like that the experience that I've had and the continuing learning and whatever I'm doing for both my own business and my app, to figure out how to push it and to market it and to keep offering value to people in a way that they're going to be like, okay, tell me more. I want to know more. And so I can then continue building that relationship with these readers and customers. And so as I'm learning about those things, I love telling people about them because everybody has something you can share. Everybody has something interesting that you can put out there. And maybe you don't want to make money, but here's a way you can do it and still have people know about it. There's just so much opportunity out there to use these digital marketing tactics to push your message further. And I love just sharing that with people because why not? Again, we're not competitors. You do well, that's great for everybody. And so I'm not going to gatekeep any of that information as I learn it.
Right. I mean, your combination of like innovation, ideation, and then marketing, I think is just really going to help get the word out about your products. And the fact that you share that knowledge, like I said, folks, I was going through his TikTok doing some research and I went, whoa, okay, that's a good one. I'm going to save that one. Okay, that's a good one. I'm going to save that one. Just really good tips. So maybe I need to reframe, because I was in my brain, I was thinking, oh, these are publishing tips, but really these are marketing tips for, self-published folks, I would say, because if you're not self-published, then the marketing may be out of your hands. But wow, just such great ideas. You also had another one that was about the end of the link can help you figure out where your sales are coming from. That one was fascinating too.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of knowing, I want to know everything. I've got Google Analytics on my website. I want to know where people came from. How did they find it? What did they do while they were there, so that I can continue figuring out what is the most valuable thing on my website for people that are coming here? What do they want to know about the most? And how can I then build that into a way to build a connection with them, or to make it easier for them to get to? Are they hitting a page on my website and falling away? Where are my sources that are going to sell well? Like my books do really well on this, but I thought they were going to do great here. DriveThruRPG has a marketing sources thing where you'd add a little tag after your affiliate tag on your URL, and you can say mine are Reddit, and here's the name of the subreddit I talked about, or my website, or I'll put website product page, or website this blog post, and so that I know if somebody has clicked that link and gone to then buy something, I know where it came from. And DriveThruRPG isn't the best about sharing that information. It's a great tool, really great marketplace. I'm actually going to be hopefully transitioning within the next year to doing more sales on my website, so that I can get that information. To figure out how I can make those relationships and those processes for buyers even easier and more valuable. And so I think that it is important to have that information if you can get it, especially selling through places like Amazon and other third-party marketplaces, though it's not always easy. I know itch.io is another place a lot of tabletop people sell. And they do a little bit more, they have a little bit more leeway with the information they'll give you and your connection with the customers. But I'm a big proponent of trying to get all that information myself, because then I own it and I won't lose it. One day DriveThruRPG decides to get rid of that whole process or whatever, then I still have my data.
Right. So smart, folks. I love everything that you're doing. I'm so excited for you, and I just want the best for you. And we're not even done with this interview, folks. Aside from the tools that you've pretty much created, are there any particular tools that you like to use that you would share for other folks that maybe do something similar? That you would want to not promote, I get, you know what I mean.
Well, so there's definitely what are you asking in the realm of marketing tools or other tabletop games, what? Because there's a lot. I'm always talking about tools and sharing the stuff that I use.
So let's try to whittle this down. Tools that help you with your ideation process, tools that you think for anyone else who maybe wants to create a world or create just writing or gaming, I guess online tools, any physical tools that you find very helpful, methods.
I tend to be a jumper. I jump from tool to tool pretty often based on what I'm engaging with. I feel like my brain, I have to be really engaged with something to sink into it and use it. So I tend to jump around a lot. I use Obsidian as my note-taking app of choice. I have built it in such a way where I can do a quick note from my phone and it drops it into my Obsidian app and organizes it for me, so I can go back to this repository of all my ideas. If I'm sitting down to do a blog or do a TikTok video, having those at hand is really helpful, because otherwise you sit down and you're just I don't know, what do I want to talk about today? And it can be really hard because it's already so intimidating trying to do this stuff and do it right. There's things you're supposed to do, and so having ideas having those on hand is really helpful. When it comes to sitting down to do a creative project, I think that there are definitely a few games that I play and I come back to. There's two that inspired Journey. There is called Alone Among the Stars, and there is another one called Artifact. And they are two other solo role-playing games that do something similar to Journey, where you're guided through this process. Artifact is you're creating a magical item in a fantasy world, and that's being handed down over centuries from person to person, and it explores who that person is and the acts and deeds that they take on using you as the magical item, and whatever that looks like. It's a fascinating game. Super cool. And I know that the same creator has created another one about spaceships, and so it's the idea of you're playing as the spaceship and you're exploring the stories around the spaceship. Mythic Game Master engine is another one that's amazing. It's again built for kind of taking the place of a game master in tabletop games, but you can use it as these writing tools and these creative tools to start asking what if. Like, I'm in this story, what's next? Like, what could happen? And again, you don't have to like use everything that comes out of it, but it may send you down these creative paths that you never would have thought of otherwise. I don't know, other creative tools. I'm a bit of a roll your own kind of guy. I will build up things within my note-taking apps to be able to walk me through these different things and make those connections.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually like layouts and things, I'm a big fan of Affinity Publisher and Design and Photo. It's like Adobe, but without the monthly price tag, which is great. They're a really awesome company. I am a big fan of Scrivener. I think obviously a lot of people who work with books and writing do use Scrivener.
Yeah.
I've used it for my Dungeon Master journal or my binder with all my cool information in it. I actually have a template for that up on my website where people can download it and then they have like a blank DM journal or a binder ready to go.
Wow.
I think it's a really valuable tool.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a ton. I feel like it's such a challenging question, right? Because like sometimes I'll be mind mapping, sometimes I'll get my iPad and sketch things out. Like, it's just a matter of like, how can I take this thing that's rattling around up here and I'm having a hard time like expressing it, and how can I pin pieces of it down in these different ways that I can then like spread it out and start like understanding what it looks like as a whole. And I do that for my app development projects. I do that for books. I do that for my games, like figuring out how to like take these chaotic imaginings from my head and kind of pin them down in a way that is, I can take a step back and like see the whole view. Sometimes I've got my entire wall in here covered in Post-it notes because I'm trying to like...
Really?
Okay, yeah, it's my brain hops from like tool to tool. So it's whatever is making sense to my brain in that moment, I'll jump onto.
Yeah, I think I really relate to that. And I do wonder if it is because we have very similar, I'm going to drop a little something here. So my day job is, I currently work for Table Group, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's completely unrelated to writing or anything that we're doing, but there's this assessment called 6 Types of Working Genius. And to cut a very long story short, there's these, 6 geniuses. And if you are working in that type of genius, you're doing the thing that you love and time goes by fast. And, all that, this is where your colors fly. In that assessment, I'm an I, the innovation, ideation. And I strongly believe you are too. And I think you're probably the first person that I've interviewed on my channel that is like that. And so it is fascinating to understand how we definitely have very similar processes. The way that you're describing kind of laying everything out and with the Post-its is how I tell people that like I'm a very visual learner and or visual organizer is what it is. Like, and so you're taking all that stuff and just kind of laying it out and then now trying to like tighten it up in maybe such a way that it'll make sense to everyone else because it makes sense to you.
Totally. That chaos can make total sense and it'd be so exciting for me.
Right.
But to be able to like put it out there and the way you phrase that is totally accurate. Like, how can I organize it visually in a way that I'm like, cool, these are where the connections are. How am I going to like tease those out? What is missing? Like, are there any gaps in this? Like, what do I need to be thinking about now to make sure that whatever this final result is nice and tight and understandable? Because otherwise it's going to be free ranging and it's going to have a lot of extra stuff in it that I just think is cool. Yeah.
We're already at an hour in, folks, and I hope you guys are enjoying this because to me, this is just fascinating. When I interview folks, I feel like I'm getting just a little slice of who you are. And I thought it would be fun to do just a few quick fire, like get to know you questions, if you don't mind. I wanted to start off with, what's your favorite, is there like a favorite junk food or maybe like a favorite snack that you need to do when you're doing your process?
I just love snacks. I just love all kinds of snacks, junk food. I don't know, when it comes to my creative processes, I don't tend to eat a lot actually when I'm like in my office doing something. I mean, I guess I would say people have probably seen me with my little yellow cup. Coffee is probably my imbibement of choice when I'm trying to be creative, which it's funny that you say that because I always think like, ooh, snacks while I'm working or snacks while I'm doing this. And I never think to grab any, like maybe like a cup of pretzels or something to munch on. But it's funny, as such a snacker, I'm such a snacker all the time. When I'm doing creative stuff, I don't usually eat a lot. Like, it's funny, I've never really thought about it before.
It's funny.
I drink a lot of coffee though.
I love to hear you say that because I am also a snacker, but when I am in my genius, my innovation, time is flying. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
And so I don't think to eat as well. Sometimes I actually have to set timers, because if I don't, time will go by and I'll go,
Yes.
oh, I didn't eat lunch and it's 3 p.m. now.
Yep. When I'm in that flow state, like there's definitely times my husband will go visit his family, and he always jokes whenever that's going to happen. If I'm staying home, he's like, oh, I'm going to come home and you're going to have written another book, right? Because that's what happened with Journey. He went and did something with his family. I stayed home, and by the time he came back, I was done with Journey. Like it wasn't just that weekend; it had been like months of work as prep. It culminated in that weekend, and those moments where you're like working and you're like, wow, it's 2:00 and I haven't had lunch, but I just need to do one more thing real quick, and then it's 2 more hours and you haven't eaten lunch, and you're just like, what the heck? I am not somebody who misses meals usually. And when it comes to my creative process, I'm just like, oh, I'll do it later. This is more important. And it's how funny how your brain like latches onto those things and is like, this is critical right now. I have to do this.
It's so funny that you said that. Yes, same. If you could travel back in time, what period would you go to?
That's a hard one. I feel like I love these ideas of this as time travel, and I always have it like colored with the idea that like I'm a pretty gay guy, and I feel like there's a lot of places in the past that probably wouldn't work out too great. But that aside, fully aside from that, I don't know. I always think like to see what things were really like back in like certain areas of the world in like medieval times. I mean, it's hard because a lot of places weren't great, but like I want to know, like there's those questions of like how do people talk? How do people dress? Like I want to see those details. Again, I think I literally just tied this back to my world builder disease. I want to know those details. I want to see what it was like this day to day. I think when it comes to probably more of a realistic, I love the music and the artwork of like the 50s. Again, not a great time to be an openly gay man, but when it comes to like the pop culture, I think the 50s and 60s and the social movements of those times would have been so amazing to like bear witness to. I feel like there's so many cool things in the past that I would love to go see in person. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Library of Alexandria, and like seeing that. What was it really like? Tell me the truth. What was really there? I just want to know.
Yeah.
But there's just so many of those little things I want to go back and like get the details of.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. I mean, same thing. As a woman, it's like, maybe it wouldn't be so good to be in like this era of, I don't know, Japan or wherever, but like
yeah. All those things aside,
yeah, I want to see it, maybe not experience it.
Honestly, I think that is the exact right thing. I would love to see it. Yes. I might not like to have the experience of me being there.
Right. With the holidays coming up, cake or pie?
Oh my God, pie all day. I feel like this is something that comes up in my birthday every year. My husband knows I'm not a big fan of cake. I love cake. I don't like frosting. And the frosting is almost always too sweet. Like a good buttercream maybe, or other kinds of fillings are great, but like I'm mostly a pie guy. Give me a good cherry pie any day over cake.
Same for me. I love cherry pie.
Oh my God, it's so good. And especially if it's just like from the can, like the canned cherries, and like a good homemade pie crust. Ooh, chef's kiss.
I swear, we're like long lost twins somehow. I was going to ask, although I think you might have answered this earlier, if you had to pick sci-fi or fantasy.
Fantasy all day. I think, here's the thing, like there is some really amazing, Becky Chambers is a sci-fi writer. She wrote The Long Way to a Very Angry Planet, I think is what it was called. And there's a series of books in that series. I read it again every year. It is such a good sci-fi series because it's about people and it's about relationships, and it explores these really amazingly conceived of alien people that are all interacting together on the ship. And it is such a compelling story that it is one of my top 10s. Almost every other thing in those top 10s is fantasy though. I freaking love magic and wizards, and I was always a magician or a wizard as a kid for Halloween, and the idea of being able to have magic is so cool. And so definitely fantasy.
Awesome.
It's my love.
I figured as much. I was like, oh yeah, he's definitely going to be a fantasy guy. So then let's talk about, you've talked about your books that you're reading. Do you have a favorite book or favorite movie, if not book? Something, and if not favorite, I know for us it's going to be really hard to pick one, but then maybe like something that would be in your top 3, top 5 that you think people should
read. That's so hard.
Oh,
that's so hard. You're asking the hard-hitting questions here. Okay, let me think. Top. Other than Journey, of course.
Obviously.
No, I feel like more recently it's been hard. I really enjoy Brandon Sanderson's writing from a fantasy standpoint. His Stormlight Archive is like, it's very well known, it's very popular, and I feel like it's for a good reason. They're very big, weighty stories, but the world building is just so cool. And I just reread his, oh my God, so deep. And his Mistborn series, I just reread the original trilogy, or for the first time read the original trilogy, and it was so good. Just such an interesting magic system, this amazing
Thank you. I was
weird
gonna
world.
say, I had never seen a magic system like that, and I thought it was very interesting. That That was definitely the big draw for the Mistborn series.
Yeah, like, and I had no concept of it. You know, having read the Stormlight Archive and having there's little bits that touch back onto this whole Cosmere, and all these stories are in the same universe, which is really amazing. I loved it. It was such a cool, weird, different magic system. Anything that presents something like that, that's like, that is new and different. I love that. Like, that will get me every single time.
Interesting.
Other than that, there's two series that I'm going to reread soon. Anything by Terry Pratchett, I'm a huge fan of. Discworld, the entire series is I have it all digitally on my Kindle, and it's another one that I go back to and I reread every once in a while. And then, because Terry Pratchett is just such an amazing writer, I just wish we would have gotten him for another few decades and gotten more books out of him. So very selfishly for me. And then the other series I want to reread is Garth Nix, Sabriel and Aborson, and I forget what the third book in the series is. They're up on my shelves here somewhere. But it's this, again, an amazing, really amazing world with such a cool magic system where she's this, it's working with the dead, so it's kind of necromancy, but it's through these bells, and it's entering the world of it's just such a cool, evocative magic system that every time I go back and reread these books, it just like blows my mind. Like, it's so cool. I love good magic systems, clearly.
I had to ask because selfishly, since we are so similar, I figure whatever you prefer, or whatever you're recommending that I haven't read, I'm probably going to read now.
Well, I want to talk about, as I read more books, because I'm always reading. I read like 75 books this year, and so I'm going to start talking more on my TikTok and my Instagram at Graycastle Press about more of some of the stuff I'm reading and what I'm getting out of it, because I think there's just so many cool little details, and the things I notice are the things that they're very different from what you notice, and being able to share the things that we all think are really cool about these stories just adds to them. I think is really neat.
Do you find that when you read, that you analyze as part of your process for the products that you're putting out? Do you analyze them to, that's how they did this world building, that would be a great thing to like help out other writers? Do you do that or anything?
I feel like I would love to tell you the answer is yes. I don't think I really do. I think there's sometimes it's mostly when something is happening that is not working that I'm feeling like, ooh, I don't know that I like this. I don't know that I'm getting into it. And then I start analyzing, like, why? When there's no friction and I'm loving the story, I'm just in it. Like, I'm not thinking about working on something. I'm not thinking about like, I can take this, and this and use it. I wish it would probably benefit me if I did, but I've been such like, ever since I was a kid, such a voracious reader that I am just here consuming the thing, and I'm not like critically analyzing it usually, unless there's friction or something goes wrong. And so I feel like that's probably something I could probably do more of and get benefit out of it, but I definitely don't. When I'm in a book, and again, you can ask my husband, I am just in it and there's nothing else happening.
I was just so curious because I do find myself, usually with movies, and maybe it's more with movies that I've seen before, because then I don't have to focus on what's new and what's happening. I know what's going to happen. Okay, now, this storytelling method really worked here because
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's when you're repeat consuming something, like some of the books, like Terry Pratchett's books. I do read those now, and like, again, you kind of know what's coming, you know the story, and so it's the idea. Then you can look at the craft of it a little bit more. You can zoom out one step and be like, I still love this story, but like, how is he tying these things together? What storytelling methods is he using? Like, what are the through lines of things? What are the callbacks to interesting things from this book or from other books? I've definitely, when things have had time to settle and you go back to revisit, I think that is a good time to do that.
And then I have one other follow-up question to this. This is all about, started from favorite book. But you said you take in a lot of Brandon Sanderson's writing, which I do also as well. Have you read the Reckoner series?
I have not. And so I feel like I have read Stormlight, and I've read all like the little bits in between. I've now read the first 3 books of Mistborn, and I have like all of the books that came after, and then the prequel, and like the little in-between vignettes, which I think that is something so cool that he does, where he like jumps into other viewpoints of the world and other characters. And Stormlight, he does this like within the book, which I think is great. But it gives you such an interesting, diverse feeling of the world, but also the story and like the reality of like, okay, this guy's a bad guy. Like when he talks more about Sadeas in the Stormlight Archive, it's like, I mean, I feel like no matter what, he's kind of an asshole, but you get more of his motivations and like where he came from and the things that have made him who he is.
Right.
And it's like, I still don't like you, but I understand you a little bit more, and it makes you more bought into the, okay, now I really want you to win.
Right.
And so I really enjoy that. And so all of these other series, I have not read the Records yet, but is on my list for sure.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I don't know if because I guess maybe it's considered like an urban fantasy then. Do you know anything about it?
I've heard the name, and I've heard like little bits and pieces, but I'm not very knowledgeable on it now.
Okay. Not that I need to, I'm not going to give away the whole thing. No spoilers. But the first book is basically that there's a boy who sees this world is full of superheroes, basically. And it's set in kind of like a, not post-apocalyptic, but kind of sort of modern world. Yeah. And this boy sees a weakness in this evil Superman type character, and he's the only one that knows this weakness.
Interesting.
And it is such a break away from, I think, what Brandon typically writes, that I had to imbibe it and figure out like why did you do this?
Interesting.
And it was so fascinating that is the reason, that was the inspiration for me to start writing, actually. So I was just really curious if you'd taken it in, because it is so different. I don't know if you would love it because it's not fantasy, but just
as long as the story's good, like as long as it's a good story, I'll get into it. I feel like I gravitate towards fantasy, but I love all kinds of like cool fiction. I'm not much of a nonfiction guy. I feel like I always think, oh, it'd be really great to learn a little more real history once in a while, but
I should get myself culture-fied.
I just want to reread another novel.
Yeah. So what if I said, finish the phrase, the way to my heart is, what would that be?
I feel like the way to my heart as a creative person is getting excited about the things I get excited about. I feel like there's, the way I love good food, so cooking me a good meal is always great. But I feel like when it's something that I'm engaged with, whether it's something I'm working on or something I'm consuming, something I'm reading, if I'm like sharing this thing with you and I'm like, this is so cool, I'm so excited about it, and I get that energy back, instant friendship, like instant. Like I'm like, you get me, we're in this, I want to talk to you for hours about this now.
Right.
Maybe a little bit too much, but it's that feeling of like being like, hey, this thing I've consumed or I'm reading or whatever, and I'm telling you about it, and especially the way I'm conveying it is working, and I'm getting that energy back, and we're like bouncing it back and forth, or oh, I've read this thing too and it's so cool. Like that is it. Like for me, that is the fastest way to build an instant connection, when you can like vibe on things like that together. So I'd say that's probably it for me.
In my younger life, definitely, when I would get excited about something, I learned very quickly to kind of actually make myself smaller and quiet, because I felt like I was so excited about something, and usually
calm
something
down, like it's
very
not that
nerdy.
Important. It's like no,
please
don't calm down. Be excited about it.
Right, and so now in my adult life, I'm more of the, you know what? I'm just very excited about this thing, and then if I get crickets, then I'm like, okay, you're not my audience, but then I will find someone who gets
someone else about it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's amazing. I've had that exact same experience too, where it's like, I'm excited about it and I'm like word vomiting about it, because I'm so like, there's something in it that I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I have to express this to somebody. And when you get like the blank looks of like the whoa, calm down, it's just like, oh, okay. And so you very quickly learn to like minimize and like, okay, well, I just won't be so excited about things. And I think that to call back to something we talked about earlier, those years where I really didn't really express my creativity in the same way, I think was because of that, where it's like, ooh, like I get excited about these things, and I don't know a lot of people who are really into like fantasy and all these other things, and it's like, I'll keep it to myself. And now I'm just like, forget that. Like I'm going to talk about it, because there's going to be people, especially in this day and age where you have instant connection to millions of people around the world that find the stuff that I find exciting, creative too, and we can like vibe about it. Like that's to me the most exciting part about this type of online world that we live in. There's so many drawbacks and so many challenges and so many dangers with it, but the good is like building those real cool connections with people you never would have met otherwise, and sharing that excitement about the stuff you love.
Right. And I love that you brought it back around, because everyone who is maybe a regular viewer on my channel will know the guests that I have on, I'm always excited to talk to them about. However, I feel like I have been so excited about your products that I have not, see, I'm losing my words. Folks, I can speak English, but here's the thing is that I get so excited that my brain is thinking faster than the words are coming out. And so I'm not expressing myself as clearly as I usually do. I'm not expressing in words my excitement. And I'm stumbling a lot because I'm that excited about it. So
well, I'm honored for you to get that excited, because it's like I almost forgot that I'm here talking about like my book, like buy my book, because it's just like we're just talking about these things we find exciting. And to me, again, that's the best part about these like online interactions and talking about these things, because somebody's going to watch this and be like, oh my God, I'm excited about it too. And that's the best. That is the best. And if you get excited about any of this stuff, please just like message me, follow me on TikTok, and be like, oh my God, you said this thing. Like I love that. I love hearing from people about these things that we all all have connections with and similarities on, and it just that's community. That's being able to reach out and like connect with people. I love that.
Yeah, folks, please find him on TikTok. Valuable gold there. Plus, you'll get updates on all his, products that he's putting out. So, Luke, why don't you share where people can find you? Yes, share your TikTok, but your website and everything else.
Yeah, the hub of everything I do with Graycastle Press is graycastlepress.com. So that's my website. You'll find all my books, my blog, all those cool things I do. You can find my TikTok and Instagram, pretty much everything other than I'm not on Twitter/X. But everywhere else you can find me at Graycastle Press. And if you can't find me there, I'll probably be there soon. And but yeah, my website graycastlepress.com is the hub certainly for everything.
Right. And then I like I said, I've seen him very active on TikTok, and I think also on Threads. I think is you.
I love Threads.
Yes.
Oh my God, I didn't even mention Threads. Threads is my favorite. I got on day one. It is the nicest, coolest community, especially like it's very good about the people you interact with. That's who you're surrounded by. And I feel like the tabletop/writing community I'm a part of on Threads is just the coolest people. And I love it. Threads is great.
Yeah. I'm going to have to check you out on Threads and check who you're connected to and maybe start following those as well, because I feel the same way. At least right now, Threads feels less cluttered by all the other noise.
Yeah, there's a lot. I feel like because of certain things that are happening in the social media world right now, there's a big influx of people. And so things are a little bit changing on Threads, I feel like. But if you keep interacting with the people you like, and people always say, who should I follow on Threads? I'm like, just go to the people I'm following and follow all of them. They're just all cool and doing creative things. And I love the people I see on Threads all the time. I love. But, it's changing. And who knows what it'll be 6 months from now, especially as they try to like monetize the site a little bit more. And they're bringing back hashtags, and they're bringing back a couple other like things that you would expect on these social networks. But you're right, it's a lot of that noise and like the constant controversy you'd see on like Twitter is just not there, or at least not in my spheres. Maybe I'm just not seeing it, and maybe it is there, but it's very good about surrounding you with the people you interact with and engage with, and you can very quickly start filtering out all of that extra noise, which is lovely.
Yes. Thank you so much, Luke, for allowing me to interview you on my channel. I'm just so glad that we connected and that we got a chance to talk about Journey and Tome volumes 1 and 2, which
coming soon.
I was going to say, so they're not technically available at the moment that we're doing this interview, but I would assume by the time this video comes out, will it be available?
I sure hope so. I've been through a few rounds of physical proofs, and I would love to say yes. If you can find information about Tome, and if for some reason it's not released, on graycastlepress.com, you can get on the pre-release list, and we're doing some fun promotional stuff there too. But for the most part, hopefully it will be available on Amazon and DriveThruRPG by the time this is out.
Awesome. And folks, if you've learned anything from my channel, if you come across his products and you love them, leave reviews if reviews are available, because those are gold for content creators like us. People need to know whether you loved it or what you've thought about it, so that they can make their own decisions. So make sure you leave reviews.
Absolutely. Leave a review. Send me an email, especially if it's like, I hated this thing. Leave a review. I'm not going to tell you don't leave a 1-star review, but send me an email just so that you can be like, hey, and then we can have a dialogue and I can improve the thing. Every bit of user feedback I get and reader and player feedback, I try to incorporate, if not into this thing, into the next thing. And so it is so helpful when people give those reviews and give that feedback.
Right. All right, folks, I'm going to have to let Luke go. I could just keep talking with him for hours.
Same.
If you folks won't see my notes, but I just have tons and tons and tons and tons of questions that I've had to maybe I'll have to have you back in the future.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that.
3 or 4 hour interview might be a little long, so we'll break this up. So thank you again for being on my channel, folks. I hope that you go follow him and support him. Get yourself Journey and the Tome books. Thank you so much.
Please do. I would love that. But thank you so much. This has been lovely.
If you want to know more about Luke and what he's working on next, check out his site at graycastlepress.com. Don't forget to snag yourself a copy of Tome for Players, Tome for Game Masters, and the best-selling journaling and tabletop role-playing game, Journey. Make sure you like and subscribe for more interviews like this, and thanks for getting Perty Nerdy with us.